Japan just drew with the Netherlands in the World Cup, but even then, here's a stat that should stop you in your tracks. Since the start of the 2022 World Cup, Japan have not lost to a single European team in normal time. In the last 4 years, Japan have beaten Germany, Spain, Brazil, and England at Wembley, becoming the first Asian team in history to do it. And they did it in front of the world against the giants of the game, the countries that have won this competition 11 times between them. And still, if you ask someone if Japan can win the World Cup, the answer you'll probably get is no. Here's why they're wrong. Because what's happening with Japan's football team isn't a fluke. It's the result of something Japan started building over 30 years ago. A plan so long, so patient, so completely unlike anything else in football, that the rest of the world only noticed it was working when it was already too late. This is the story of how a country that barely played football decided to win the World Cup, and how a comic book, of all things, had a big part to play in it all. This is Football Explained. When you picture a Japan squad, you might still picture plucky underdogs, neat, organised, there to make up the numbers. That Japan is gone. This Japan can name an entire starting 11 from Europe's top leagues, a goalkeeper at Parma, defenders at Bayern and Ajax, Kubo at Real Sociedad. Their striker, Ayase Ueda, just won the Golden Boot in the Dutch league, outscoring everyone else by 8 goals. Rewind to their first ever World Cup in 1998, and every single player played at home in Japan, not one in Europe. That's the journey in a single fact. And this isn't a team carried by 1 or 2 stars. It's so deep that Premier League regulars sometimes can't get in the side. The way they play terrifies people. In fact, over the recent years, football enthusiasts have been keeping a keen eye on Japan's tactics and how it has evolved, particularly under one man. Under Hajime Moriyasu, Japan beat England and Brazil with barely 30% of the ball, soaking up pressure, then breaking with a speed the giants couldn't live with. Against Brazil, they went 2 goals down and won 3-2. No team in history had ever done that. Their best dribbler, Kaoru Mitoma, sadly injured for this World Cup, once turned down a pro contract at 18 to go to university, where he wrote his thesis on the art of dribbling, strapping a GoPro to his head to study how to beat a defender. That's what the world is up against with this Japanese team. There's a phrase that followed Japan out of Qatar after they knocked out Germany and beat Spain. Nobody wanted to play Japan. 4 years on, it's still the same. Except now, they're even better. Just look at their run leading up to the tournament. But talent alone doesn't explain Japan. Plenty of countries have talent and go nowhere. What makes Japan different is where this team came from. Because not long ago, this country was a footballing nobody. And the way they fixed that is with a 100-year plan and, well, a comic book. It's the 1980s. Japan is a baseball country. Football plays in front of a few thousand. There isn't even a real professional league, just a corporate tournament where teams are owned by companies and players are literally employees. You worked for the company in the week and played at the weekend. And this is the country that decided it was going to win the World Cup. In 1992, before they'd ever even qualified for one, the Japan Football Association wrote a 100-year plan. The official goal? Win the World Cup by 2092. Build a league, build 100 clubs, build the culture from the ground up. It sounds insane, but look at what they did. In 1993, they launched the J-League. The corporate teams we talked about became city clubs. To make the country pay attention, they brought in the biggest names they could. Zico came out of retirement, Gary Lineker signed up, and a young Arsene Wenger took charge of Nagoya Grampus years before Arsenal. The public responded instantly. 60,000 at the first match, 6.5 million across the league within 2 years. But here's the crucial part. They built it beyond the top levels. They built downwards. Grassroots academies, youth coaching, football embedded into towns and schools. So a whole generation grew up thinking the game was theirs.
The Japanese way isn't just hiring coaches, it's the culture. And culture accepts here in Japan that when you join a sports team at the age of 6, parents will accept as normal that your child, your little 6-year-old, will train 4 days a week, 3 hours a session, and it goes all year long. There's no on-off season. They just play, play, play. Now, couple in the commitment to mastering basics and technical skills and the amount of repetition and the amount of time they practice and the amount of games that they play, you're going to develop some good players.
Compare that to China, a country of over 1 billion that poured money into football from the top down, importing superstars. The money went in, the culture never came. China still can't qualify today, but that's a story for another day.
You know, when you look at sports, and you've been here as long as I have, there's certain tenets to Japanese culture that are very important, such as all sports, not just football. They value discipline, repetition, and the commitment to mastery of the basics. And you see that through all sports.
But a plan on paper doesn't make children fall in love with a sport. Something else did that. In 1981, a manga artist named Yoichi Takahashi created a story about a boy with an impossible gift for football and an impossible dream of winning the World Cup. The manga was Captain Tsubasa. At its peak, it sold over 6 million copies a week. A whole generation of Japanese children read it and decided they wanted to play football. The first Japanese player ever to succeed in Europe, Hidetoshi Nakata, he picked it up because he read Captain Tsubasa and wanted to try the overhead kick. And it didn't stop in Japan. Translated worldwide, Oliver and Benji in Italy and Spain, Captain Mahed in the Arab world. Iniesta read it. Torres said he started playing because of it. Let that sink in for a second. A Japanese comic book helped inspire World Cup winners for other countries. That's the secret hiding inside Japanese football. They didn't import a football culture, they drew one into existence and sent it around the world. By the time those two grew up, Japan had a professional league, a home World Cup in 2002, and a wave of players heading to Europe. The women's team won the whole thing in 2011. As European football became big globally in the 2000s, the cross-cultural bridge became a huge catalyst for a whole new generation of Japanese footballers. Even if Japan's national team wasn't at the forefront then, you had a sense that something was brewing, because the impossible plan was working. And it was working so well that in 2005, they moved the deadline forward. The target wasn't 2092 anymore, it was 2050. There's just one problem, and every Japan fan feels it in their stomach: the round of 16. Japan have reached the knockout stage 4 times. 4 times, they've gone out. In 2018, they led Belgium 2-0 with 20 minutes left and lost. In 2022, they went out to Croatia on penalties. So close, so often, it's become a curse. There's an honest tension underneath the success. Football is still not king at home. Baseball is. Most J-League games sit behind a paywall. But here's why it might not matter this time. Because Japan knows its weaknesses better than anyone. For decades, the one thing they couldn't produce was a world-class striker, and the culture responded the way it always does. Blue Lock, a manga built entirely around creating Japan's greatest striker, is now the best-selling sports manga on the planet, and this year, the Football Association officially partnered with it, using the story to scout Japanese kids growing up outside Japan. Most countries stumble into a golden generation and pray for another. Japan manufactures them, and on a schedule. You can see that culture in the fans too. Famous for staying behind to clean the stadium, picking up litter that isn't theirs. They befriend rival fans, then sing their own team's name. Unity is their symbol.
It's cut across everything in culture. If you go to a baseball match, a tennis match, if you go to a movie theater, people are going to clean up after themselves. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to sit in the right seat that their ticket matches up to sit. And those are just, characteristics of Japanese society and culture. And so that's the good thing about Japan, because it's easy to get everybody on the same page.
So, will Japan win the World Cup? Maybe, maybe not. But here's what you have to understand. This is no accident. They wrote a plan when they were nobody. They drew a comic book that built a generation, then drew another to build the next one. They built a league, a culture, and a pipeline, brick by patient brick. So when you watch Japan next, don't just see them as a dark horse. Watch them as what they actually are, the most patient project in the history of the sport, arriving right on time and exemplifying Japanese character. For a bystander, the dream a manga artist drew in 1981 may just be another comic book, but for Japan, it's a mission.